I think it's a super exciting time to be in the world and to be part of the human resources community. I think AI is absolutely transforming and will continue to transform pretty much everything we do. So if you think about the research, people are demanding more out of HR, whether it's employees, whether it's managers. People are really looking for that help to put together career paths, to find more diverse candidates, to be able to do things in a more cost-efficient manner. And if you look at how AI is transforming things like, obviously, performance enablement, getting smarter, giving managers more nudges, helping them take some of the guesswork out, some of the administrative work out of some of these processes that they have to do.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of BetterWorks' brand new podcast, People Fundamentals. I'm Alex Lerald, Senior Director of Corporate Content and Customer Marketing. BetterWorks' core belief in people fundamentals revolves around enabling everyone in the workforce to strive for excellence, to foster creativity, and to acknowledge each individual's contributions. BetterWorks translates these beliefs into business fundamentals through strategic HR leadership. And in this show, we're diving even deeper into these principles as we hear from the experts about how you can make them come alive in your organization. This episode, which is adapted from a BetterWorks webinar, focuses on the rapid pace of change and adaptation of AI in the workplace. Navigating these changes and adapting to them is a challenge shared across the workforces of countless industries, but the rewards are invaluable. Our panel includes Ben Eubanks, Chief Research Officer at Lighthouse Research and Advisory and author of Talent Scarcity. Ben brings a wealth of knowledge on AI for HR. Also joining us is Susan Lovegren, CHRO of the Institute for Corporate Productivity and a BetterWorks Advisory Board member. Susan has a rich background in leading people and culture transformations. And we're also pleased to have Andrew Roundtree, Director of HR at Best Western International, a valued customer of BetterWorks. Andrew has been instrumental in pioneering performance enablement at Best Western. Before we dive into our panel, let's first set the stage with some key takeaways from the 2023 State of Performance Enablement Report, which served as a launching point for this discussion. This independent research study, made possible by the BetterWorks team, captures the sentiments of the workforce, focusing on how well individuals feel enabled to perform at their best. One of the biggest takeaways that arose from the data: employees want a fair deal from their employers. Employees want to get out of work what they put into it. They've been through a lot in the past few years, like job cuts and changes in their roles. They've adapted to new work methods and handled colossal stress and exhaustion, not just from work, but from global events too. And through it all, they've persevered, showing tremendous determination and productivity throughout the challenges of this time. Yet, despite their efforts, they're not receiving the recognition and reward they believe they've earned from their contributions. And so, the need to reimagine the employee deal became the overarching, actionable takeaway of the research, and it is the focus of this episode. Ultimately, when employees have performance enablement that works, they feel more productive, engaged, confident, and optimistic. Turning over to our panel, let's hear how we can embark on reimagining work. We can start by redefining how we view performance management itself. This 100-plus-year-old process is often viewed simply as a problem to tackle. However, Ben sees it differently. He considers it a crucial aspect of business, not just another box to check. Here's Ben on his unique perspective and philosophy.
The problem here is that for many companies, and I've been an HR leader, so I've been there, I've had this responsibility. This is just a thing to check off. It's a performance thing. It's just an HR thing. And that's very short-sighted to see it that way. Ultimately, this is really about not just that individual's performance, but this rolls up to business performance. And if we're not holding them accountable to things and measuring actions and behaviors that align to business performance, time to go back and start over and make sure we're putting those things together on the front end, because that's the ultimate goal of this. Are we performing better as a company tomorrow than we did yesterday? And that only happens when we're helping to enable each of our people. I love the performance enablement focus here, because it's not just managing your performance and putting a thumb on you as an employee, but how do we bring out the very best that any of our people bring to the table, make sure they're able to show up to work capable, prepared, they have the right resources, the right leadership support, right, the right trust to really enable them to be their very best. The big thing that I see in our research is that companies that have better revenue, better retention rates, better engagement scores, those high-performing companies are much more likely to be weaving all of these things together, right? Recognition, development into how they manage performance. If they're a low performer, they're much more likely to say it's just about managing performance, it's just backward looking. It's not about forward looking and helping to be more capable and valuable tomorrow. That's my big perspective on that.
It's that check it off mentality that Andrew wanted to avoid. For him, performance management is about aligning your team, fostering a united direction, and reaping the benefits that come with it.
So many times throughout my career, performance management is looked at as a check the box. Comes up twice a year. It's a compliance piece. We just got to work through it. But truly, employees are the biggest asset. I mean, what's going to separate the good companies from the great companies are those companies that have the ability to work as a cohesive team, get everybody rowing in the same direction towards a common goal. Sounds simple, but it's extremely difficult or everyone would be doing it. So companies have to work really hard to create a culture that fosters, an environment that focuses on people working together towards a common goal. And it's even harder to get them focusing on the right goal. And that's where performance management really comes in. It's these conversations that ensure everyone is focusing on the right things. And the outcome is exactly what Ben said. You're going to see more revenue. You're going to see cost savings. You're going to see retention. So many great things.
What else does reimagining performance management require? As we discussed at the top of the show, this year, we've taken the breakneck pace of change to a whole new level. You know what I'm about to say. Generative AI, ChatGPT, Bard, scores of new productivity-based AI apps coming to the market every day. And that's on top of the broader technological acceleration. Hearing those words may get you excited or make you feel overwhelmed. How are we to even think about approaching the changes our workforces are facing? Here's what Susan has to say about how organizations can effectively guide employees through these changes, leveraging technologies to enhance performance management amid this complex and dynamic landscape.
Well, first of all, I think it's a super exciting time to be in the world and to be part of the human resources community. I think AI is absolutely transforming and will continue to transform pretty much everything we do. So if you think about the research, people are demanding more out of HR, whether it's employees, whether it's managers. People are really looking for that help to put together career paths, to find more diverse candidates, to be able to do things in a more cost-efficient manner. And if you look at how AI is transforming things like, obviously, performance enablement, getting smarter, giving managers more nudges, helping them take some of the guesswork out, some of the administrative work out of some of these processes that they have to do. But I think one of the areas that is pretty exciting is around the talent marketplace. So I think we're going to move to being able to find candidates in a very different way. Certainly we'll be able to find them in places that we never could before through this powerful technology, be able to bring them into the workplace in a much more unbiased way, focus less on skills, more on attributes, which we'll be able to measure through AI, which will, again, enable much higher performance. You can always teach somebody a skill, but you can't really teach them an attribute. So it's going to really start to transform lots of different ways we think about our talent in general and how we get the best out of people and how they have the absolute best experience.
As an HR professional, you may be wondering whether you should be worried about keeping up or feeling excited about the possibilities. Here's Susan's take.
So I think from an HR perspective, it's less to be fearful of and really more to lean into. I think it will improve what we do. I don't think it's going to take the human touch out of it. People are still going to demand that connection. As great as AI is, there's a baseline of information. We're still going to need that human creativity and innovation that goes along with continuing to progress the agenda of your company. So I think it's a very exciting time. I think there's going to be lots and lots of opportunities for all of us. I would say embrace it, learn more about it. Josh Bersin just put out a really great white paper on AI and the implications around HR, not to be afraid of it, but really to try to understand it and look for applications that are going to give you much more holistic solutions versus point solutions. I mean, we're finally kind of getting there with the end-to-end employee journey as a community, and a lot of it is going to rest on AI.
To summarize Susan's insight, she's emphasizing the potential of leveraging advanced technologies to expand opportunities in the talent marketplace. It's not about job loss, but rather strategic workforce planning and skill reallocation to more impactful roles. Do Andrew and Ben share this sense of optimism?
I'm very optimistic and excited about the changes that are going to come, especially from the HR standpoint, because this is going to allow us to really add more value than I think we've ever in the past, just because there's going to be new opportunities. But the one thing I would say is I talk to a lot of employees and I see, we have those early adopters that are very excited for it. They're already thinking of ways that they're going to implement AI into their roles, their departments to add more value. But then there's these employees that have some FUD, some fear, uncertainty, and doubt of what this means to them. And I think it's crucial, especially in HR, to start having these conversations to start eliminate some of that fear so we can start embracing some of the values that come from it. But I think where I'm most excited from an HR standpoint is some of the things that Susan talked about in analytics. I think there are so many opportunities to make data-driven decisions, and AI is going to be something to really help take that next level, especially in HR.
I think about what drew me into HR personally. I think about what made me excited about it. And it wasn't going through and reconciling benefit statements or checking payroll exceptions or any number of other things we do that just make you want to pull your hair out. It was things like really coaching our leaders to be great leaders. It was about developing a pipeline of talent so that we didn't get caught flat-footed next time someone decided to leave arbitrarily. All those kind of things excited me about getting into HR in the first place. And what's thrilling about AI is it's going to take some of those other things off our plate, off of our to-do list that we probably don't love that much anyway, that make us feel a little bit robotic and impersonal, and let us spend more time and encourage us to spend more time in those areas. And we're actually seeing that in our data. I know it's been a kind of the saying in the market for a long time, AI is going to let us do more strategic stuff. People throw that around. I'm an optimist, but also a little skeptical sometimes.
Before we continue hearing from Ben, he knows what he's talking about because he wrote a book about it, Artificial Intelligence for HR.
Actually done research on that to understand how employers that are transitioning to using some of these tools, how are your people then spending their time? Is it, okay, great, we need to get rid of some headcount? Or no, they're going to spend that time developing deeper relationships, building greater trust, really focusing on proving our impact back to the business. So those things sort of really thrill me, and that's the focus. That's the reason I wrote the book in the first place, is because I wanted to encourage and educate HR leaders out there on how these tools can help us to really realize that vision we have. One thing I'll echo off of, or kind of bounce off of Susan's comments earlier around talent marketplaces, is we actually did some research on this, and we found that employees, when you give them a choice for that first initial career exploration, they actually prefer some sort of self-service technology, an AI-enabled tool where they can explore, experiment, test, look at what career paths are possibly out there for them before they talk to a manager. 80% of them prefer that computer version, an online version that they can play with versus talking to a manager, because we all know once you have that discussion, some managers are going to close upon you. That's going to sour the relationship, cause other issues. So there's a lot of interest from the employee side for that.
Ben also made a great point about the fact that we're at an inflection point in history with AI, which means there's a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of possibility in the way work will transform. Let's hear more from Ben.
When you look at automation, you look at the history of it, mechanical automation, when we were farming and agriculture and all that stuff, to digital automation today, all these types of automation, when that wave comes by, the work that's left behind is more human focused than the work that was there before. It strips away some of those things that are repetitive, that are routine, that are over and over and over, and helps us focus on those things that it leaves behind, which are a little more human oriented. Things like compassion, things like curiosity, those skills that humans have, those attributes, Susan, that humans have, that are much harder to teach an algorithm, almost impossible in some cases to teach a system to do those things the way that humans naturally do that kind of stuff. My encouragement there, as all the research we're seeing, all the data we're seeing, the experiments we've done, there's a lot of hope and excitement around this. And it's not just Pollyanna, let's hold hands and sing, but we're actually seeing in the data employers transitioning to this and seeing better outcomes for their people.
As we mentioned before, BetterWorks performance enablement research is clear. Employees want in return from their employer what they give in terms of the energy and effort it takes to do their jobs. Have Ben and Andrew observed substantial progress in the spectrum of organizations getting this holistic employee experience right? Or is it still a rarity to find a company effectively aligning career growth, culture, autonomy, and meaningful work? Here's what they think.
I really see a divide. There are companies, and some of you may be listening in, you represent one of these companies that really is leaning in on this front, is thinking about these pieces and how they come together and how to serve your employees well. You're really focusing on those things, and that is at the forefront of every decision that it can be. And those employers are seeing the benefits there. They're seeing the results. They're seeing the impacts, like I mentioned earlier. There are others that I'm not sure how to start, or it seems like such a big problem, or it's always been an issue and it will always be an issue. We've kind of lost hope that there's a chance to actually solve for that. And what I'll say is there are so many different things we can do around this, different ways you can start. It's not about saying, okay, I want you to snap your fingers and tackle these 17 parts of how we manage and support talent, and it's all going to be great. Because all of us know that's not possible to do that. You can't have all those focus areas because it'll fall apart. But instead say, okay, I want to really improve this one thing.
That's about taking a complex problem and breaking it into smaller, digestible parts. Sounds like advice that we parents often give our kids when they're facing something that seems insurmountable. Ben shared some examples.
Right now, we're going to start with getting managers supported and bought in and really enabling their people. Or we're going to focus on belonging of our employees and making sure they feel accepted, respected, and appreciated when it comes to work. Because what we see in our research is when someone says they feel accepted, respected, and appreciated when it comes to their job, they're 5 times more likely to tell everybody else they know about how great your company is to work for. Right? When many companies were struggling with recruiting issues in the last year or two, right, that's the thing I was telling them is it's not just about posting more jobs or making sure recruiters are out there on every channel, but are you making sure that every one of your people are so thrilled with working there they are glad to tell others about it? One of the things that stands out to me is the research shows that when you make opportunities visible to your people, they are twice as interested in pursuing those. Pretty straightforward. Make them visible. They're twice as interested in looking at and pursuing those opportunities. So if we can start thinking about, okay, how do we get them bought in? How do we make sure that everyone has the opportunity to chime in and develop themselves and grow and be successful long-term, help them cast a vision for what it looks like being successful at your company? Because if we don't do that, if we don't have our managers do that, or they don't know how to, when the recruiter calls from the competition and says, hey, let me tell you about this great opportunity, they don't have anything in their head to compete with that because we haven't helped to paint that picture. So that's the big focus here is if we want to do that, it's absolutely possible. Some employers are doing it really well right now. But if you're one of those that feel like you're a little bit behind, the simplest and easiest piece of advice is pick one of those areas, really focus on being great at that, and build from there.
I think when Ben was talking about those who may have lost faith, I will say I was one of those individuals. I'd been in HR for a long time, and the performance management never really engaged me, got me all excited to come into work. And over the last couple of years, we have really hit a stride. When we first moved to BetterWorks, I really thought the goal setting and the continuous goal setting, the more agile approach was really going to be the thing that moved the needle for us. And it has helped in the transparency. So many good things came from it, but the conversation piece has been the biggest needle mover for us. The managers need help. They're busy. They don't have time to go study. What questions should I be asking? How do I really help with this fair deal when it comes to employees? But conversations have allowed us to give a playbook to these managers to allow them to have meaningful conversations, more frequent conversations. So when employers are walking out of there, they feel like they do have, and they know they had a fair deal. And the evolution for us is we have changed the way we do conversations dramatically. We do quarterly ENPS surveys with our staff, and we take themes from there and we will incorporate that into our conversations. So if we're seeing themes around work-life harmony being, out of balance, we will put questions in there to help engage the managers, help them guide them to those. And then we have some other questions that we do twice a year. And I'm going to read these off because they have changed our entire culture. So we ask the employees to answer these going into these conversations. If you could change one thing in your role, allowing you to excel more, what would it be? How would you like to grow in this organization? Do you feel a sense of purpose? What do you need from your manager to do your best work? What are we currently not doing as a company/department that we should be? And do you have an opportunity to do what you do best every day? And if no, explain why. And those questions twice a year, they have changed the culture and they have changed the outlook from an employee standpoint when it comes to performance management. So BetterWorks has been a huge help with this.
Another crucial aspect is the vital role of managers and the immense pressure they grapple with. It's widely acknowledged that getting this managerial dynamic right is paramount. Considering that employees often cite bad managers as the top reason for leaving their jobs, Let's dive into the current state of managers in today's workplace. Are organizations truly holding managers accountable for what seems like a pervasive issue? Here's Susan and Andrew on the matter.
I think managers are pretty burned out. They're being asked to do an awful lot, and they're asked, especially first line, second level managers, to still maintain all of the technical work that they had been doing, contributing as an individual contributor, but also contributing as a people manager. And this is where I do think HR technology, and as we just discussed, having a playbook, having some tips and tricks and frameworks and technology to help support them at scale is becoming increasingly important. I would agree there's been an underinvestment in basic training for managers. When you were on a management track, you would be expected to go through a certain amount of training, and you would have a lot of in-person kinds of things, or you would travel. And those things just aren't scalable any longer or affordable in a lot of environments, a lot of companies. So I think having these alternative ways of building that confidence for the managers is absolutely critical to having a good employee manager experience. But that's where I do believe some sort of a technology solution is probably the only way to really scale that and to help these poor managers who are expected sort of by osmosis to be effective in their job. And I look at the playbooks and things that BetterWorks does and many other companies. I just think it's really the shift that we're seeing that's positive.
Susan made a bunch of really good points. We got to coach our coaches more than ever, but we have to make it as easy as possible for them. The managers are close to burnt out, if not burnt out. They're juggling so many different balls in the air at one time. So having playbooks, guidebooks, toolboxes, whatever you want to say for them, however you make it easy for them to be successful at their job, that's where we need to be looking. And that's where conversations really come into play for us. Sometimes they need help with understanding what questions should I be asking, and conversations allow us to do that, is to just kind of give them the guidebook and say, hey, go have these conversations. It's going to spearhead into a bunch of really good conversations, but let us help you get it started. So it's just making things easy for them where we can.
Another critical concern highlighted in the research is the issue of trust, particularly the trust gap between employees, the company, and HR. Without trust, success might be impossible to achieve. What actionable steps can companies take to rebuild this trust and steer their ship back on course? Ben and Susan discussed the potential that the right performance management approach has for the organization.
I was at an event recently speaking, and I asked the question of a group of HR leaders in the audience that, okay, who in here thinks that an employee, a brand new employee we just hired, how many of you think this person needs to earn their manager's trust? And like 3/4 of the people raised their hand. And I said, well, that's really strange because those people think they've already earned our trust by getting through this entire hiring process and us selecting them. They think that we're all going to extend them trust right off the bat, not that they have to earn it from us. And so that's one thing I would encourage us to stop and think about is if you are one of those, if you have a bunch of managers that say they've got to earn it, then you just pick them because you trust them to do their best job. We need to think about the signals we're sending there and having the right incentives to reward the right behaviors we're trying to get out of these leaders, because you may have people that say, oh, we believe that, but then they're incentivizing their own behaviors. So if we want to rebuild trust, we have to be willing to extend it first. And the easiest person to extend it to is someone who's gone through all of those hoops we make them jump through, all those backflips and everything else to be able to come on board with our company. Let's extend a little bit of grace, a little bit of trust, and expect the best from them and move forward accordingly instead of saying, okay, now they've got to try to start earning this. Now they've got to start trying to prove themselves. That's one of the big things that came out in our new research on performance is that performance is about trying to come together and say, I'm trying to prove that I'm worth it, instead of saying, how can I improve what I'm doing over the coming few months, next year, so on. So if there's an encouragement there on the trust piece, because once it's burned, it's hard to rebuild. Everybody knows that in our personal relationships, our work relationships. The first place to start is extend some grace, extend some trust. It's hard to go wrong that way.
Kind of going back to what Ben said, and it's kind of the flip. Your job is to have your employees want to trust you. So it's really not about you trusting them when they're coming in. It's you have to earn their trust. And you do that by wanting them to want to trust you and through your actions. And it's a lot of doing what you said you're going to do. So the typical HR landing page is about our culture, our values, career paths. And somebody comes inside of a company, and if there's no there, trust is going to begin to erode. So it's a lot about old-fashioned principles, doing what you said you were going to do, that your word matters, that you have your employees back. You're taking steps every day to make them want to trust you. And I think that's a very different way of thinking about trust. To Ben's earlier point, it's, okay, now prove it to me. I've hired you, now prove it to me. And that is a really backwards, to me, mindset.
And with all of these changes and reimaginations, we have to plan what the future of the organization will look like. Will we see the creation of an AI department in the same way that we saw the creation of the IT department when technology originally entered the workplace? Here's what Ben predicts.
I'm seeing some larger enterprises that do have a head of AI that is in charge of thinking about that application across multiple areas of the business and trying to keep a unified sort of governance to that. That said, HR leaders that are really forward thinking are going to be thinking already about how this fits in. And if you have a little bit of a lean towards analytics or lean towards HR technology, I'm seeing some of those leaders start to adopt that into their titles, into their responsibilities, and really take a leading role in that instead of waiting for someone else to tell them, like we have for many years with the finance, IT, telling us what to do or dictating things. They're saying, I'm going to take a leading role in this and participate in the solution.
In this episode, we've underscored the transformative impact of AI in performance management. Our guests emphasized its potential to enhance various HR functions, such as performance enablement and talent acquisition. It was especially motivating to hear them share how we can adapt to new technology, such as how Susan encouraged the HR community to embrace AI, acknowledging its ability to augment rather than replace the human touch. This urges a proactive approach to understanding and using AI holistically to solve challenges in an ever-changing landscape for HR. Andrew also expressed enthusiasm for AI-driven changes in HR, emphasizing AI's potential to unlock new, valuable opportunities. He acknowledged that some employees have legitimate concerns and advocated for proactive conversations to dispel fears and embrace AI's benefits, particularly in enhancing data-driven decision-making. By taking control of people data, he believes HR can focus on strategic initiatives and human-centric aspects of the job. Ben echoed this optimism, highlighting how AI can alleviate administrative tasks, allowing HR professionals to invest more time in strategic areas like leadership coaching, talent development, and relationship building. This ultimately elevates the human-focused aspects of HR work and leads to better outcomes for the organization. As we continue to make progress with AI in the near future, we'll continue to see shifts toward proactive adoption and integration of AI and analytics into HR by forward-thinking leaders. And if there's one thing we can leave you with today, it's this question: how can you use new technology to reimagine performance management at your organization? Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode of the People Fundamentals podcast. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google to find out what's in store. And if you like what you hear, share us with your friends and colleagues. We'll see you again soon.